You know that feeling when you walk into a room believing your life is about to change, and then within seconds, everything collapses like it never existed? I still remember that morning as if it had just happened yesterday. Monday, early March. Seattle had just cleared from the rain, sunlight glinting off the glass panels of Helios Dynamics, the clean energy company where I'd worked for 8 years. I walked into the building wearing my favorite gray blazer, holding my usual to go coffee cup. My heart was racing with pride and anticipation. Today's meeting had been announced as a quarterly recognition ceremony, and I was the first name mentioned in the email. I wasn't naive. I knew what that meant. After 8 years, dozens of successful projects, hundreds of late nights, and countless evenings spent asleep at my desk, I finally thought it was my turn for a promotion. I took a seat in the leather chair inside the conference room, my pulse quickening. Familiar faces smiled at me from across the table. On the other side sat Nathan Hale, my new manager, appointed by Global Ventures after they acquired Helios 3 months ago. Nathan was the kind of man people described with words like efficient, cold, and pragmatic. He stood up, voice steady and controlled. Thank you all for being here. Today we're celebrating a challenging but successful quarter, and I want to begin by recognizing the person who led the Blue Wind project, the one who secured our biggest contract of the year. He looked directly at me. Amelia Brooks. Applause filled the room. I smiled, cheeks warming. Nathan gave a slight nod and motioned for his assistant to bring an envelope forward. I held my breath. Amelia, he said, Helios truly values your contribution. In an industry facing widespread cutbacks, we still want to acknowledge your hard work. So, starting next month, your salary will be adjusted by. He paused, a faint smile curving at the edge of his lips. $500. I blinked. I'm sorry? I thought I misheard him. $500 a year, he repeated. We want to encourage your spirit, but we also have to stay aligned with market fairness. The room went silent. I could hear a pen roll off someone's notebook. A few glances crossed awkwardly. Nathan kept that polite smile, as if he had just done something noble. $500. A year. Not even $10 a week after taxes. After 8 years, hundreds of overtime hours, and countless nights my daughter had dinner alone, I was being rewarded with $500. I smiled. A polite, twisted kind of smile that scared even me. Thank you, Nathan, I said quietly, my tone eerily calm. I truly appreciate the recognition. Nathan nodded as if the meeting was done. If you have any questions, talk to HR. And if you ever feel your expectations differ from our policy, you always have other options. Helios respects every personal decision. That line, you always have other options, felt like a velvet wrapped knife. When the meeting ended, coworkers patted my shoulder, muttering awkward congratulations. I smiled, nodded, and walked out. Every sound around me seemed to fade, until all I could hear was my own footsteps. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back looked like a stranger, with trembling lips, eyes glassy with tears she refused to let fall. I wasn't going to cry. Not here, not in front of them. But once I closed the car door in the parking lot, everything broke. The sobs came hard, raw, uncontrollable. Mascara streaked down my cheeks. My hand slammed against the steering wheel, not because of the $500, but because of the humiliation. For 8 years, I never asked for more. When the company was small, I did the work of two people. When deadlines slipped, I apologized to the team. When Maya, my daughter, was hospitalized for an asthma attack, I brought my laptop to the hospital just to finish reports. And now, this was my reward. I kept asking myself where I went wrong. Was it believing that hard work was enough, or thinking that loyalty still meant something? My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Honey, come home early for dinner tonight. Maya wants to show you her math grade. I set the phone down, took a deep breath. No, Maya couldn't see me like this. She deserved a mother who stood tall, not one crushed by disrespect. I wiped my face, opened the car door, and stepped into the cold air. The city still smelled faintly of rain and coffee drifting from the cafe nearby. I looked up, letting the wind sweep through my hair. And if you're hearing this right now, Maybe driving home from work, maybe sitting on a crowded train, maybe somewhere far away in New York, Denver, or Dallas. I just want to ask, have you ever had a day like that? A day when you gave your all, believing your effort would finally be recognized, only to realize you're just another number on a payroll sheet? If you have, you're not alone. I've been there. On that very day, my fingers tightened on the steering wheel. Above the gray skyline, a patch of light broke through the clouds. Small, but real. And I knew, even a small light is still light. I unlocked my phone, deleted the unsent message to HR, and caught my reflection in the dark screen. I'm done letting them decide my worth, I whispered. But what I didn't know then was that just a few days later, one phone call would change everything. That night, I came home later than usual. Seattle was still cloaked in mist, streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement like strips of cold glass. When I opened the door to my small apartment, I saw Maya asleep at the kitchen table, her head resting on her arm beside a piece of paper showing the two of us smiling under the sun. Under the drawing, written in purple marker, were the words, "Mom, you're my hero." I froze. My chest tightened. Shame and pain welled up at once. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a loser. I gently lifted Maya and carried her to her room, tucking the blanket up to her chin. Looking at her tiny face, I remembered all the mornings I rushed out before she woke up, all the dinners I missed, all the promises I hadn't kept, all of it traded for success, which today had been priced at $500. I sat down on the living room floor, leaning against the sofa. Outside, rain began to fall again, each drop clicking on the glass roof. I wondered, if I vanished from the company tomorrow, would anyone actually care? Probably not. At Helios, everyone was too busy trying to survive. The next morning, I went to the office with swollen eyes. I tried to act normal. I still made coffee for the team, still smiled at everyone, and still said, "We can do this in the morning meeting." But the atmosphere had shifted. Glances darted and then slid away. I heard whispers when I walked into the conference room. Something was wrong. By midday, I understood. A message had gone viral on the internal chat. Heard Amelia asked for a 30% raise, got slapped with $500 instead. Serves her right. Someone had talked. And it didn't take a genius to guess who leaked it. Nathan Hale. He hadn't just humiliated me in the meeting. He wanted me isolated. An old tactic, but an effective one. At lunch, the break room was crowded as usual, but when I stepped in, conversation stopped. I scooped some salad and sat in a corner, catching half smirks from the next table. A sharp ache spread through my chest, a feeling I hadn't felt in years. Being excluded. That afternoon, Nathan stopped by my desk. "Amelia," he said with a soft, fake tone, "I heard there's been some misunderstanding. Maybe people exaggerated yesterday." I looked up, trying to stay calm. "What misunderstanding, Nathan? About your reaction to the raise decision?" "I just want to make sure we're aligned on our goals and not letting emotions affect performance." I pressed my lips together. "I'm completely professional in my work." "Good," he smiled. "I just worry you might feel disappointed. But here at Helios, everyone has to accept market reality. No one is special." The last line landed like a light punch wrapped in polite packaging. After he walked away, I stared at my screen, the blinking cursor mocking me. No one is special. How ironic. I once thought I belonged here. I once believed Helios was family. That evening, I picked up Maya from her tutoring class. She ran to me, hugging my legs, chirping. I got a 90 in math. The teacher said that if I do all my homework, I can join the team. I smiled and patted her head. "Great job, Maya." She looked at me, hesitant. "Mom, are you okay? Your eyes look red." I gave a small laugh. "Must be allergies." A small lie, but necessary. That night, after Maya was asleep, I sat down with my laptop and opened the raised email. The number 500 glared back at me. Then I noticed the tiny line beneath it. "If no response is received within 48 hours, this adjustment will take effect automatically." I didn't know if it was intentional or not, but the feeling of being cornered rose again. I closed the laptop and stepped out onto the balcony. Down below, car lights shimmered on puddles. Seattle was beautiful in a cold way, just like Helios, shiny on the outside, hollow inside. The next morning, I discovered something worse. An email from HR was sent to the entire department. We remind all employees of our project confidentiality policy. There have been signs of data leakage. Any unauthorized sharing will be dealt with severely. I didn't need to read further. I knew exactly what was happening. Nathan was laying the groundwork. He wanted to paint me as disloyal, a security risk. I was scared, not of being accused, but of losing the one thing I valued most, my reputation. In my world, reputation is everything. Lose it, and you lose your future. That afternoon, I sat alone in an empty conference room. Lights off, only natural light spilling through the glass wall. I opened the project file and stared at the list of clients I'd served for years. People who trusted me, called me by name, shared their family stories. I whispered, if they knew how I'm being treated, what would they say? A small voice inside answered, maybe they won't know. Or worse, maybe they'll believe the company over you. My phone buzzed, Mom calling. I answered, you're working late again? Yes, still a few things to finish. She hesitated. Maya says you've been sad lately. Something wrong at work? I took a breath. No, just tired, Mom. Sweetheart, she said gently but firmly, don't let work turn you into someone else. Maya needs her mom, not a title. After we hung up, I sat still for a long time. Mom always said simple things that cut straight to the heart. The next day, Nathan sent me a private meeting invite. Subject line, touch base, performance alignment. I knew what that meant. Performance alignment, fancy language for a warning. In the meeting, Nathan gave a polite smile and opened his laptop. Amelia, I just want to ensure you're focused. I've heard some people say you seem distracted. I'm meeting all my KPIs, I said, eyes locked on him. Right, Nathan nodded. But attitude is also a key part of performance. I hope you're not letting personal feelings affect the team. I have no personal feelings, only work, I said, my voice colder than I intended. He stared at me for a few seconds, then smiled. Good, because I need people who can separate emotion from decision. I hope you can do that. I understood the subtext. He was testing how far he could push me. Walking out of the room, I felt my heart pounding. Sunlight stretched across the hallway floor, and inside me, something stirred, a mix of fear and anger. I knew that if I stayed silent, they would crush me. But if I fought back, I could lose everything. I stopped in front of the big glass window, looking out at the city below. Tiny figures rushing, hustling, each lost in their own battles. I told myself, no one is coming to save you but you. That was when a name flashed in my mind. Jordan Pierce, a former colleague I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Maybe he was still at Novagrid. Maybe he knew something. I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing for sure. I had reached my limit. And when people are pushed to their limit, they start to change. The name Jordan Pierce rang in my mind like a call, both strange and familiar. The last time we spoke was probably more than a year ago, when he left Helios to join Novagrid, the rival in the renewable energy field. Back then, I sent him a quick message. Hope they treat you better over there. Jordan had been someone I trusted, one of the few people in the office I could actually talk to without wearing a mask. He once told me I was the real brain behind the big contracts, even though on paper I was just a project lead. He was also the first to defend me in a meeting when I was blamed for a contractor's delay. I opened LinkedIn. My heart raced. He was still at Novagrid. Title: Senior Director of Strategic Operations. I hesitated, typed a message, deleted it, typed again, deleted it. What should I say? Hi, long time no see. Do you have a position to rescue me? It sounded pathetic. I sat in front of my screen until nearly 11 at night. Maya was fast asleep. Outside, rain drifted down. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. Finally, I sent a simple note. Jordan, it's been a while. If you have time this week, I'd like to ask you a few things about Novagrid. Just a chat if you're free. Within minutes, he replied. Are you free now? I froze. I didn't expect that. I stared at my phone, heart pounding like a drum. My head filled with questions. Was I betraying the company? What if someone found out? Was I going too far? Then I remembered Nathan's eyes today. The whispers in the break room. The HR message. The $500 raise. I remembered the helplessness when Maya asked Mom, "Are you okay?" and I had to lie. I pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Amelia? Jordan's voice was deep and warm, strangely familiar. "Hi," I said, trying to stay calm. "Thank you for calling back." He gave a soft laugh. "From the sound of your voice, this isn't just curiosity about Novagrid, is it?" I exhaled. "I don't know where to start." "Then start with why you messaged me close to midnight." I was silent for a few seconds, then began to talk about the Rays meeting, the glances from coworkers, the loaded conversation with Nathan, the internal warning email. I told him everything, no holding back. Jordan didn't interrupt. He just listened. Sometimes I heard him sigh or nod on the other end. When I finished, there was a pause. Then he spoke, his voice serious. "Amelia, I've been waiting for this call for a long time." I was stunned. "What do you mean?" "When I left Helios, I hoped one day you would too. Not because I hate that place, but because I knew they didn't deserve you. You've always been the one keeping the fire going, holding the client relationships, taking care of the things no one else noticed. And they've been exploiting that." I stayed quiet, my throat tightening. Jordan continued. "I'm working on a team expansion project at Novagrid. We need someone experienced, someone who knows how to run operations, especially someone who understands clients. You were the first person I thought of." I hesitated. "But if I move to Novagrid, Helios will say I'm defecting to a competitor. They could sue me for unfair competition or accuse me of taking client data." "Did you sign a non-compete?" Jordan asked. I froze. "No. I'm still under the old contract from before Helios merged." "Then you're completely free. They're bluffing. They have no legal grounds." I slumped into my chair. My mind was spinning. Part of me felt relief, the other part fear. Fear that something was about to change. Jordan went on. "I'll send you an email tomorrow morning. We can set up a coffee, no strings attached. But Amelia, yes? If you decide to make a move, know this. You're not a failure. You're someone who stood up when others stayed silent." I didn't answer right away. Only a small thank you left my lips, but inside, a door had opened. After hanging up, I sat still for a long time, staring at the dark phone screen. Behind the bedroom door, Maya was asleep, holding her favorite teddy bear. I walked over, laid a hand on her soft hair, then stepped back. I went out onto the balcony. Rain was still falling lightly. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of calm. I wasn't sure what would happen next. I didn't know if I truly had the courage to leave the place I'd given 8 years of my life. But I knew one thing: I would no longer let anyone else define my worth. I woke up the next morning with a strange feeling in my chest. Not sadness, not relief either. More like standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to turn back or jump, and hope something miraculous waits below. In my inbox was an email from Jordan. "Meet the CEO of Novagrid tomorrow morning at 8. The roastery on Pine Street. No commitments, just coffee." But I think you should hear what he has to say. I read the line several times, my stomach tightening. It would be my first time meeting a CEO outside of Zoom calls or client conferences. A face-to-face meeting, with even a possibility of being recruited, hadn't happened since I graduated from college. I almost typed back, "Let me check my schedule," but my fingers wrote something else. "I'll be there at 8. The next morning, I left home earlier than usual. I wore a cream turtleneck with a navy blazer over it. Not too formal, but not casual either. Maya was still asleep. My mother stayed behind to look after her, like always. The roastery sat on Pine Street near Capitol Hill, an old-style cafe with red brick walls and soft golden light. I arrived at 7:50. The place was still quiet, just a few people working over laptops and half-empty lattes. Jordan was already there. He stood up when he saw me, smiling that warm, familiar smile. "I ordered you a cappuccino." "Still prefer cinnamon, right?" I laughed, even though my stomach was tight. "You have a good memory." Sitting beside him was a man in his early 50s, tall and lean, with silver hair at his temples. His clothes were simple, a denim shirt and gray jacket, but every movement carried the calm confidence of someone who had fought many business wars. "Amelia, this is Ethan Blake, CEO of Novagrid." Ethan stood and shook my hand. His grip was firm, warm, human. Not the rehearsed handshake of a busy, distant executive. "It's a pleasure to meet you," he said. "Jordan has told me great things about you." I sat down, still unsure whether this was a friendly chat or an unofficial interview. We started with easy questions. I told him about the Blue Wind project, the process I designed for the solar supply chain, and the overnight client sessions. Ethan nodded, occasionally asking short but sharp questions. He wasn't interested in flashy revenue figures. He asked how I handled crises, how I kept the team together when resources ran thin. After about 40 minutes, Ethan set down his cup and looked directly at me. "You know, Amelia, we've had our eye on you since last year." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Helios has been restructuring, and several clients told us they stayed because of their relationship with someone they call Amelia from projects." He smiled. "Your name has become a brand." I gave a faint laugh. Part of me felt seen. The other part was terrified because when your name is known on both sides of the battlefield, it's no longer just a casual coffee. Jordan glanced at me, then said quietly, "I think it's time we tell you that Helios has a much bigger problem than a $500 raise." I waited. Ethan continued. "We received information from an independent audit partner. During the Global Ventures merger, part of the Employee Welfare Fund was redirected, off the record, without Labor Council approval." He met my eyes. The final authorization came from Nathan Hale. The blood drained from my face. "You mean they used the employee fund for what?" "Converted it into short-term executive bonuses to keep upper management during the transition. And at the same time, they forced regular employees to accept less under the excuse of market realignment." My hands tightened in my lap. Of course. That was why Nathan kept repeating that the market is changing. That was why every proposal felt like a polite death sentence wrapped in corporate language about optimization. Jordan spoke softly. "Amelia, the rumors about you, the isolation, the whispers about disloyalty, all of it was part of a plan to push you out. They knew if you stayed, others would start comparing." I stared down at my coffee, now cold. "Why tell me this? Why help me?" Ethan leaned forward. "Because we don't just need skilled people. We need people who see what's wrong and have the courage to fix it." He slid a folder toward me. Inside was a formal offer. Position: Director of Sustainable Operations. Salary: $165,000 a year. Bonus: 25% based on performance. Insurance: full coverage for you and your dependents, including Maya's asthma medication. Equity options: start date: flexible within 30 days. Signing bonus: 15,000 if you accept within 7. I looked at the page, my hand trembling slightly. It was more than triple what Helios had dangled in front of me. But it wasn't just the money. It was the way they looked at me like a person, not a line item on a budget. I looked up. "Aren't you afraid Helios will sue me? They could accuse me of taking clients." Ethan smiled lightly. "We don't need you to pull anyone. Just do what you've always done. The clients will decide for themselves." I sat still for a few moments, not rushing to answer. Ethan stood, offering his hand. "No pressure. Take your time. But if you want a place that counts people as much as numbers, we're here." I shook his hand. Jordan's eyes met mine, filled with quiet encouragement. When I stepped out of the cafe, the morning wind brushed against my face. I stood on the sidewalk, the printed offer still warm in my hand. Across the street, people hurried past, everyone heading somewhere, and I was standing at the biggest crossroads of my life. I didn't know exactly what I would do, but for the first time in months, I felt I had a choice. I returned to the Helios office on Monday, the printed offer from NovaGrid tucked deep inside my bag, folded neatly, but beating loudly inside my head. I hadn't answered yet, not officially. I needed time, needed a plan. I couldn't be reckless. I had Maya, a home, and a life I'd built carefully, dollar by dollar. I couldn't risk it all for one promising conversation. But I also knew one thing. I was no longer the same person who walked out of that meeting with the $500 raise. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, checked project emails, pretending everything was normal. Still me, Amelia Brooks, the reliable project lead. But underneath, something was shifting, quiet and seismic. Before 10 in the morning, a message popped up. Mandatory meeting with HR at 10:30 a.m. Room 5. B. No subject, no explanation. My chest tightened. I walked into room 5B with a calm face. But when I saw Nathan already seated with Tracy from HR beside him, I knew this wasn't a routine check-in. "Good morning, Amelia," Tracy said, eyes fixed on the paper in her hands. Nathan leaned back slightly, fingers interlaced, his calmness unsettling. "We just want to have a quick discussion about a few observations," he said, stretching the word observations like he was describing a lab experiment. "There are some indications that you might be considering leaving the company." I looked him in the eye. "I have the right to, don't I?" Nathan smiled. "Of course. We don't force anyone to stay. But we do have a responsibility to protect company assets. I didn't take anything. We didn't say you did." Tracy cut in, reading from a note. "We've been informed that last week you had contact with a representative from Nova Grid, a direct competitor. Can you confirm this?" I swallowed hard. Clearly they knew, but I couldn't let them trap me. "I had a personal conversation with an old colleague," I said evenly. "Nothing in that violates my current contract." Nathan nodded, as if satisfied, though his eyes never left me. "Then I'll be direct," he said, closing the notebook in front of him. "If you intend to leave, we need to make sure all client data, internal files, and strategic documents are handled properly. And if there's any indication that you've shared those things, even indirectly, we won't hesitate to take legal action. Are you threatening me?" "No," Nathan said with the same polite smile. "I'm protecting the company." I said nothing. I stood, nodded to Tracy, and walked out. The rest of the afternoon felt like being watched. Every time I opened a client file, someone from IT seemed to walk by. Every message I sent made me think twice. Nathan had brought the battlefield right to my desk. And the worst part? I had no proof. Everything he did stayed within legal boundaries. Just enough to suffocate me, not enough to fight back. I needed an ally. That night, after putting Maya to bed, I opened my laptop and searched the internal directory for an old name. Rachel Kim, Project Accounting. Rachel was quiet, private, but sharp and kind. We'd worked together on 3 major projects. I remembered once she discovered a misreported budget line, and after that, silence. No one mentioned it again. I called her. She answered, surprised. "Amelia? Everything okay? Can we talk privately for a minute?" "Sure. Hold on." She turned off her kitchen light and closed the door. "Go ahead." I didn't waste time. I told her about the HR meeting, the trap I sensed, and what I'd heard from Novagrid, that Helios was diverting employee funds into management bonuses. When I mentioned Nathan's name, her face tightened. "You already knew, didn't you?" She hesitated for a few seconds. "Amelia, I can't say much, but last year I was told to modify a consolidated report before sending it to the parent company. When I asked why, they said it was to align with international accounting language. In reality, it hit a transfer, about $400,000. I exhaled sharply. "Do you still have the original?" Rachel hesitated. "I have a printout. It's not signed." "That's enough." The words came out steady, though my hands trembled. I'd never been the type to blow the whistle. I played by the rules. But this time I knew, if I didn't stand up, they'd bury me. Rachel asked softly, "What are you going to do with it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I can't keep living scared every day. I need to protect myself. Then I'll help you." That simple sentence felt like someone catching my hand as I was falling. The next morning, I arrived early, printed a copy of Rachel's report, sealed it in an envelope, and hid it in my drawer. I also reviewed my employment contract, highlighting every clause related to benefits, confidentiality, and termination. I wasn't going to act yet, but I needed to be ready. All day, Nathan said nothing to me, but I knew he was watching. Every email I sent had a new name, CC'd in. Every document required a fresh login. The power game had begun, and I was no longer a pawn. I was moving like a rook, straight, deliberate, and dangerous. By the end of the day, I stood by the office window overlooking the parking lot. Wind lifted the hem of my coat. Inside me, there was no fear left, only cold, sharp clarity. Nathan wanted me gone quietly, head down, but I wasn't going anywhere like that. I would leave with my head high, and if I had to, I'd bring light into the darkness they built. I used to think resistance was explosive. It began with anger boiling over and shouting, "I've had enough." But real resistance, at least when you're up against a system like Helios, doesn't start with a scream. It starts with a small USB drive in your coat pocket and a quiet phone call at the end of the workday. Jordan picked up after 3 rings. "I'm guessing you need a lawyer." "Not just one," I said. "I need a strategy." I told him about the HR meeting, about Rachel, and the report she'd shared. Jordan listened without interruption, then said simply, "There are 2 ways to play this, Amelia. One is direct, loud, and public. The other is silent, methodical, and strikes once so they can't recover. I chose the second. Good. Then let's begin." For the next 3 days, I lived like a spy inside my own office. Every move measured, every word deliberate. I began building my counterfile. I reopened client contracts and pulled excerpts from emails, proving I'd managed crises directly. I saved internal Slack messages showing clients and teammates expressing trust in me. I backed up project materials I'd created myself, not proprietary data, but evidence of my real contribution. I didn't take a single thing that belonged to Helios. I didn't have to. The real value was in the relationships, the trust, the nights spent working until 2 in the morning to keep a contract alive, and all of that was mine. Jordan connected me with Elisa Tran, a corporate employment lawyer, Vietnamese American, sharp and precise as a scalpel. "I won't let them turn you into an example," Elisa said, "but you'll need to play it by the book and play smart." Her instructions were clear: no public reaction, no hint that you know anything. Do not resign yet. Wait until Helios exposes itself or breaks the law. Record any meeting involving handovers, verbal warnings, or threats to benefits. Line up witnesses. I thought of Rachel, and who else? That night, I wrote down 3 names. Rachel Kim, the one with the financial records. Devin Michaels, the engineering lead who helped me rescue the East Sun project after Helios slashed its budget. And Sonia Patel, a former client, now COO at Westgrid, who once said I was the only person who truly understood their system inside out. I called Devin first. "Would you be willing to confirm to my lawyer that I personally kept East Sun alive?" "Of course," he said without hesitation. "Without you, we would have lost that contract. I just need a written statement, even an email. You'll have it." Sonia was trickier. Contacting a former client while still employed could be misconstrued. But I knew that if I didn't, I'd have no defense when Helios inevitably tried to paint me as incompetent or disloyal. I called her after dinner. "Sonia, I'm not selling anything. I just need you to confirm that when we worked together, I kept my commitments." There was a pause, then she said, "Amelia, if anyone dares say you're unprofessional, I'll write 'em all." Whole paragraph proving otherwise. I laughed softly, the tension easing. "Thank you. I might take you up on that." That weekend, I met with Elisa and Jordan in a private conference room at NovaGrid. On the table lay everything: my original Helios contract with no non-compete clause, proof of internal isolation, the falsified budget report, client emails confirming my work, the NovaGrid offer. "You have everything," Elisa said. "The only question is when to move." I glanced at the calendar. The deadline to accept NovaGrid's offer was next Wednesday, 4 days away. If I accepted, they wanted me to start in 2 weeks. "Our suggestion," Jordan said, "is that you submit your resignation on Tuesday afternoon, right after the monthly meeting with Nathan. Do it in front of everyone. No drama, just enough to take control of the room. And then?" Elisa smiled faintly. "Then we send the press release and a copy of the financial report to Global Ventures' oversight board." I nodded, my heart heavy. I wasn't happy. I wasn't vengeful. But I knew this was the only way to walk out without bowing my head. That night, I didn't open my laptop. I didn't draft an email or review documents. I just sat beside Maya, listening as she told me about school and the digital cat in her new game. I watched her face, calm and bright. "You'll come watch my gym test tomorrow, right?" I smiled. "Yes, I will." "Really? You're not busy?" "No, I'm free." For the first time in months, I felt in control of my own life. I arrived at Helios on Tuesday, the day circled in my calendar and Nathan's. The office opened like any other morning, but the air felt different. Colleagues exchanged quiet glances. Everyone sensed something was about to happen, but no one knew what. I walked to the large fifth floor conference room carrying my leather case. Inside were the financial report from Rachel, emails from Devin and Sonia, my original Helios contract, and the Nova Grid offer, all the pieces I had assembled over the past week. Nathan was already there. Beside him sat Tracy from HR and two senior managers, Marissa Lee from project development, and Victor Shaw from finance. The room was silent, like waiting for a bomb to go off. Nathan stood to greet me. Amelia, thanks for coming in early. We have our monthly meeting with several points to cover. I nodded, opened my case, and placed copies of documents in front of each person. I'd like to begin early as well. My voice was calm, steady. Marissa started with metrics, project progress, budgets, and KPIs. Nathan spoke about the importance of this transition phase. I listened while rehearsing every word I was about to say. When Marissa finished the quarterly financials, I cut in. Excuse me, Marissa. Before we move to personnel reviews, I'd like to ask, can leadership explain why the Employee Benefits Fund, the one we were promised, dropped 20% last year while executive bonuses rose 15%? The room froze. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Victor spoke first. Amelia, that topic has already been addressed at higher levels. We're optimizing operating costs. Optimizing operating costs, I said softly. While workers are left unprotected? I set the printed report on the table. This is a copy of the financial records from Rachel, showing the transfer from the benefits fund to the executive bonus pool. Tracy moved forward, opening her notebook, trying to take the papers. You shouldn't bring internal documents into this meeting. If it's internal, then why was it sent to the parent company without a full report? I asked. Who knew about or approved this transfer? Nathan pressed the conference mic button. I want to stress, he said coolly, if you're presenting evidence, we must have the right to verify its authenticity. No problem, I said with a faint smile. I've also prepared emails from Devin and Sonia confirming that when the East Sun project was on the brink, I personally intervened to keep it alive. I held up my phone, and Devin's voice came through clearly, detailing how I handled risks and stabilized the project. Each statement underscored my role, not exaggerated, just factual. Then I switched to a slide deck showing client emails, including one line that read, "We're only continuing with Helios because of people like Amelia who understand us beyond the theory." Marissa's eyes widened. Nathan's face flushed. If you want to verify, I said, I can provide the original printouts and hash files to prove nothing was altered. Tracy tried to cut in. We'll review this internally after the meeting. Please don't postpone, I said, raising my hand. I've waited too long for this meeting to be more than routine. This is the time for accountability. Nathan cleared his throat, trying to regain control. You know you're putting yourself at risk by confronting us like this. I looked straight at him. The risk was staying silent and being destroyed piece by piece. If you have proof I've done something wrong, show it. If not, stop making me the scapegoat while you take from employees without transparency. Silence thickened. Victor turned to Nathan. How do you want to handle this? Nathan stood, scanning the room. We'll initiate an independent internal audit. Executive bonuses will be frozen until we have results. And Amelia, we'll need your cooperation to share documents and walk us through the details. I nodded slightly, willing. And one more thing, Nathan added, his voice clipped. If there's any evidence you've used internal materials to harm Helios, we reserve the right to take legal action. I took a deep breath, locking eyes with Tracy, whose expression was a mix of anger and fear. That sounds fair. I'll provide everything required. But if Helios keeps denying responsibility and tries to use the law to crush me, I'll send all of this to Global Ventures' oversight board and the energy press. Nathan's eyes widened. Marissa frowned. Victor stayed silent. Tracy leaned toward the mic, adjusting the volume. The meeting ended with Nathan saying, "Thank you for staying calm today. We'll continue this." I gathered my documents and walked out. Behind me, I heard pens tapping, papers rustling, colleagues' eyes on me, some admiring, some wary, some in disbelief. In the hallway, a security guard nodded. Ms. Brooks, you okay? I gave a tired smile. I'm fine now. I walked down the stairs, my chest burning. Not joy, not relief, just the feeling. I had made my move, and I knew there was no going back. Wednesday morning, when the Seattle sun began slipping through thin layers of clouds, I was already at the Nova Grid office, sitting in a small meeting with Jordan, Ethan Blake, and their legal team. In my hand was the contract, and in my chest a mix of fear and hope. If everything went right, I would leave Helios. If it didn't, I could lose everything: my reputation, my stability, maybe even my career. Jordan looked at me, his gaze steady. Everything's ready. You just need to sign. Ethan smiled. We believe you'll bring real value to Nova Grid, and those Helios clients, they'll remember who was truly behind their success. I exhaled and sighed. Black ink printed my name, Amelia Brooks, next to the title Director of Sustainable Operations. My hand trembled slightly, but my mind was clear. This was the moment I stepped out of the shadows. As the morning went on, Helios began to stir. A wave of emails requesting an independent audit reached Global Ventures. Energy media outlets started buzzing. Through an independent newswire, Energy Pulse Weekly released a headline. Sources confirm. Helios is accused of diverting employee benefit funds to executive bonuses. The case raises serious concerns about ethics in the clean energy sector. By that afternoon, I received word from NovaGrid. WestGrid, one of Helios's major clients, had officially transferred its renewable maintenance contract to NovaGrid. I sat in the NovaGrid conference room as they read the facts aloud. Due to internal findings and Helios leadership's lack of transparency regarding fund transfers, we no longer have confidence in Helios project operations. Effective next quarter, the system maintenance contract will transition to NovaGrid. The room erupted softly, but with unmistakable energy. Jordan tapped the table and grinned. You see? When the truth shows itself, people make the right choice. Later that day, when I returned to Helios, the atmosphere had changed. Coworkers passed each other with wary glances. Some avoided eye contact, others smiled faintly but said nothing. On my desk lay a thick envelope, the Nova Grid contract now marked accepted, with a congratulatory note from Ethan. Beside it, a small card from Devin. I believe in you. Congratulations. My hand went to my chest, heart pounding. The feeling was both light and taut, like a string pulled to its limit and finally released. The next morning, Nathan said nothing to me. No meetings, no warnings. I could tell chaos had already begun. As I walked down the hall, Marissa looked away. Tracy kept her head down. Victor gave a brief nod, but didn't speak. That afternoon, an email arrived from Helios announcing that Nathan and Tracy had been suspended pending the audit. Marissa would assume temporary leadership. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen. For a moment, I saw myself 7 years earlier, the first big project, the first solo business trip, the nights when Maya stayed up late waiting for me to come home. I remembered the sleepless nights, the quiet sacrifices. Now I wasn't here for revenge. I was here to rebuild, for myself, for Maya, for everyone who had been silenced out of fear. On my last evening at Helios, I walked into the Blue Wind project room, my old second home. I brushed away a tear and picked up the ceramic mug Maya had painted with the word Mom. I sent my official resignation email, thanking the team and wishing Helios the strength to find its integrity again, if it still wanted to. Before leaving, I called Devin and Rachel outside the conference room, handing them 2 envelopes. One held my new contract, the other, a handwritten thank you for standing by me. Rachel said nothing, her eyes glistening. Devin put a hand on my shoulder. We did the right thing. When I stepped out of the Helios building for the last time, the security guard nodded. Leaving already, Ms. Brooks? I smiled. Yes. Thanks for keeping my morning safe all these years. My footsteps echoed through the lobby. It didn't feel like defeat. It felt like freedom. 3 years later, I stood behind the podium at the Northwest Clean Energy Summit in Seattle, looking out over a hall filled with business leaders, industry journalists, technology innovators, and more than a few familiar faces from my Helios years. My hand trembled slightly around the microphone, but when I met the eyes of those listening, I knew silence was no longer an option. I had grown, not because of my new title, but because I finally understood that my value didn't belong to anyone else, and that this story was never just mine. I began. My name is Amelia Brooks. 3 years ago, I left a company I once called home after being offered a $500 raise. That was their idea of appreciation. I chose not to endure. I chose to walk away. Warm applause filled the room. I told the story briefly, the meeting that changed everything, the insulting offer, the late night call to Jordan, the proposal from Novagrid, the quiet planning, and the confrontation inside that Helios boardroom. I spoke of how Westgrid's contract transfer proved that clients still recognized integrity and trust. I shared how the media exposed the fund diversion, how Nathan and Tracy were suspended, and how I spent nights wondering whether to stay or go. For the past 3 years, I have been the Director of Sustainable Development at Novagrid. I built an ESG team of 12, some of them former Helios colleagues who believed there was another way to lead. I come home every evening to pick up Maya from school, watch her do homework, listen to her stories about her new games, no longer chained to tension and dread. One afternoon, Maya had a small science showcase at school. When she called me up to speak, I told the kids, "If I could do this, you can too." She smiled at me, her eyes bright. My heart felt warm, free of pressure, free of fear. I remembered the nights I stood on the balcony, imagining how it all might end. There were times I thought I would lose, be sued, lose everything. But looking back, I realized the seed of change did not come from winning in a boardroom. It came from not letting my heart go cold, from refusing to let silence strangle my voice. I thought of Nathan. I ran into him at an industry event a few months ago. He had shifted roles, now a consultant for a small startup. When our eyes met, I didn't see an enemy. I saw someone who chose a different path, and I understood that justice doesn't always mean revenge. Sometimes it means release. The audience fell silent as I closed. I'm not telling this story to boast. I'm telling it for anyone crushed into silence, to remind them they have the right to speak. No one gets to define your worth. You do. The applause was louder this time. I bowed slightly and smiled. That night, back home, I sat on the couch while Maya climbed into my lap and rested her cheek on my shoulder. I stroked her hair and whispered, "Sweetheart, if I hadn't stood up, I would have taught you how to bow. But I want to teach you how to stand tall." I looked out the window at the city lights flickering in the distance. My heart felt steady, peaceful. The fear was gone. What remained was the quiet conviction that light never dies, as long as someone dares to turn it on.